Hello and welcome to The American Individual. I'm your host Dylan, and today we have a new video for you guys, and in this video we will be talking about gun violence. This video is brought about because the leftists taking advantage of tragedy, and they will not rest until every American loses their Second Amendment right to defend themselves. Before we get into the video, make sure to like and subscribe, as well as check out the merch store if you want to see the channel grow and improve. Now let's get into the video. Unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably heard of the Uvalde shooting, in which 19 kids and 2 teachers tragically lost their lives on May 24th, 2022. This shooting has reinvigorated the gun control movement, along with several other publicized shootings in which innocent people lost their lives. Now, while these shootings are tragic and heartbreaking, the right to own firearms outlined in our Constitution is an important part, and probably the most important part, to what we can do to prevent these things from happening in the future. I want to direct our attention to the Uvalde shooting specifically in this video because I could talk about all the shootings that have happened in this country, but it would take me years. Now, this shooting specifically is a direct result of 2 things: failure of the prevention and cowardice on the part of the police officers on this tragic day. Now, I'm just going to go through basically the timeline of events published by the Texas Tribune. I check it out here. It's a great article. And I'm glad I waited to make this video because a lot of evidence has come out, stories have changed on how much of a disaster this really was. Now, just some background information. Several months before the shooting, the shooter had posted an Instagram post ominously, and had been messaging multiple people online about acquiring firearms, even going and asking his sister on how to get one. He also messaged a girl he met online who was in Germany about his intent to shoot his grandmother on the day of the shooting. Side note, he was raised by his grandmother because his parents abandoned him when he was young. When he turned 18, about a week before the shooting, he bought 2 AR-style rifles and almost 400 rounds of ammunition. I believe it was 375. And now it brings us to the fateful day of May 24th. We're going to go through it. It's pretty linear, so I'll be reading a lot from my notes. But anyways, the shooter, he shoots his grandmother in the face somewhere around 11 a.m., but she was well enough to go and call the police, and again, this was at 11 a.m. After that, he then stole her vehicle and drove to the elementary school, which was only a few miles away, and crashed at 11:28. He then exited the vehicle and shot at 2 witnesses who went and also called the police. So there have been 2 police calls at this point at 11:28. At 11:30 a.m., a teacher called the police after seeing the shooter had a gun and was walking toward the school shooting at it. At 11:31, he starts walking across the parking lot, and police arrive at the funeral home. The school district officer actually sped in the direction of who they thought was the shooter, and it turns out he drove past the shooter and was actually directing his attention at the teacher. Luckily, the teacher, I do not believe, was harmed. At 11:33, he then enters the school and shoots 100 rounds into 2 connected classrooms. He was able to enter the school after a teacher shut the door and the automatic locking system failed, which is a prevention thing. These lock systems should always work. At 11:35, 3 officers enter the school through the same door where the shooter entered, and then they get shot at by the shooter and decided to retreat. Later, 4 more officers arrive. At 11:37, he fires 16 more rounds off. At 11:43, the police in elementary post on Facebook that the students and staff are safe in the building. The building is secure in a lockdown status, and schools officials say in the announcement, Uvalde Police Department posts on Facebook, large police presence at Robb Elementary. We ask the public to avoid the area. So it's already been 15 minutes and the police are already lying. At 11:44, more police arrive and are inside the building, and they also get shot at. So they retreat and try to find some cover and start treating this whole thing like a hostage situation. At 11:51, more police show up. At 11:54 a.m., people start filming, and police are shown stopping parents with the balls to go in after their kids and try to save them. At 12:03, more police are showing up, and the gunman has been in the school for almost half an hour. And elementary school students start calling the police and asking for help, all while, at the time, 19 police officers are in the building doing nothing. At 12:10, the student calls back from earlier, saying multiple people are dead. And at 12:13, the same student calls a third time, yet nothing has changed on the police side. 12:15, a border patrol unit with tactical shields arrive. At 12:16, the student calls again, and there are people still alive in the classrooms, claiming there are still people alive in the classroom she's in. And this is approximately 45 minutes after the police have done absolutely nothing to go save these kids who are, if any were still alive when they initially got shot, were bleeding out and injured and needed help. At 12:17 p.m., the school announces the shooter is still active, all the while parents and onlookers are being stopped still from entering the school while their children could be dead. At 12:19 p.m., a different student calls 911 but hangs up after another student told them to. At 12:21, the gunman fires a few more times, and 15 minutes later, at 12:36, the second student calls back again and is told to stay on the line quietly. And then at 12:43, over an hour, the shooter has been inside the school. They shoot the door of the room the student on the phone was in. At 12:46, the student says they can hear the police next door. At 12:47, the same student was begging for the police to come in now after hearing them. 12:50, using the janitor's keys, a border patrol agent gets into the school and finally ends the reign of terror. 12:51, the children are evacuated out of the room, and at 1:06, the police finally made a statement that the shooter was in custody, but I believe the shooter is now dead and rotting in hell. Now, before you say anything about taking firearms away and all these other terrible ideas, we just need to process this, and I just want anyone who may not agree with me, to hear me out. This monster had 77 minutes in this school. They had 77 minutes before a border patrol agent, which was one of the last units to arrive on the scene, went and sent the bastard straight to hell. 77 minutes. Even the border patrol team, though, waited 35 minutes before stopping it. I hope you all understand how much time 77 minutes actually is and the amount of horrors you can commit in 77 minutes. The entirety of 9/11 happened in just 102 minutes, and the South Tower was only up for 56 minutes after being struck. 56 minutes, that's less time. The people in the South Tower of 9/11 had less time to get out of the tower than these kids in this school. This psychopath was able to have free reign over a school for 77 minutes, and police were on the scene for pretty much all of it, and they did nothing. Children were calling for help to 911 inside the school. Parents and bystanders were being stopped and pepper sprayed and prevented from entering the school, some of which had brought their own firearms. Meanwhile, cops were waiting inside the school while there was an active shooter on scene. This whole event is an utter failure of police leadership and police in general to uphold their oath to serve and protect. And I hope that the leaders in charge are ashamed of themselves and they all resign. That is what they deserve. 77 minutes alone in a school with a firearm, having free reign, is unacceptable. Now, I understand the emotional reaction people have had in blaming the firearm and, oh, he's 18 years old, why did he have a gun? Why did he have a gun? Why did he have a gun? However, let me educate you on why adding more laws and changing ages would not have prevented this from happening. Number one, this person was clearly mentally ill, and from their actions and posts online, this is obvious to see. I don't want to make excuses, but he obviously didn't have the best home life, which may have contributed to his mental state, considering his parents abandoned him and left him with his grandmother. Number two, there is no red flag law, universal background check, or banning of ARs or changing the age that would have stopped this shooting from happening. Why? Well, because he passed the background checks we have in place. Okay? We already have background checks in the first place. And I'm going to be making another video on what it takes to get a firearm and what different firearms are classified, because we need to go over some gun basics, because a lot of people just don't get it. But he passed the background checks, and no one reported him or caught him or doing anything. Facebook didn't catch it or Instagram didn't catch it when he was posting all these unstable things online. And banning of ARs wouldn't have done anything either, because this kid could have bought a shotgun or a lever action rifle or a hunting rifle, or could have gotten a handgun from a friend. And it's, in 77 minutes, you can do a lot of damage with any type of firearm. Number 3, this entire policing disaster shows why we need the Second Amendment more than ever. Police were next door to dying kids calling for help, and they did nothing. If one of those kids, not saying we should give firearms to kids, but if anyone in those classrooms would have had a firearm, it would have been over. Because that shooter was just as much of a coward as those police were. If there was one teacher in that building who was armed, 19 kids could have potentially gone home that day to their parents. So what I'm proposing is this. It's time we let teachers who are willing and able and trained to carry firearms and aren't cowards, let them carry. This is the only way. It's the only way to protect our kids if you actually care about preventing deaths of children in mass shootings like this. Number 4, and lastly, gun laws are notorious for not working. As I went over, none of the gun laws that people are talking about would have stopped this kid from buying a firearm. But the cartel smuggles thousands of illegal firearms into this country every year and sells them to criminals. So you think if I only use a 5-round or 3-round magazine in my AR-15, then the criminals will stop using them as well, and we'll have an even playing field? No, that's ridiculous. The only people that will get hurt are law-abiding citizens who don't want to get in trouble for having a 10-round magazine. Now, if you are outraged by this shooting and still want gun control, let's just take an example to explain again why gun control doesn't work. Let's look at Chicago. Yes, we've had a lot of mass shootings all over the nation, and every time the media blows it up, and every time one happens, you'll know about it pretty much immediately. And can any of you actually tell me, though, how many people have been shot and killed in Chicago so far in the month of June? No? Well, 13. 13 people have been shot and killed in Chicago. So far this year alone, 242 people have been shot and killed in Chicago. Over 12 times the amount of the Uvalde shooting in this year alone. Now, I don't want to downplay the severity of Uvalde, but what does Chicago have? Chicago has some of the most stringent gun control in the nation, yet they have these obscene amount of deaths. And if anyone wants to say as well, oh, well, that's gang violence, that doesn't count. The hell you mean it doesn't count? Do black lives not matter? Because in 2022 so far, 193 black people have been killed in Chicago. And I care about stopping the violence in this nation as much as anybody, whether that's a mass shooting or that's just an everyday robbery gone bad. However, I want to stop the violence, which are larger issues facing this nation. Mass shootings are tragedies, but the reality is they are rare. And I gave some solutions on how to stop them in the future by letting teachers protect themselves and not having bad leadership and cowards in the police force. I also care about the day-to-day violence the people of this nation face every day in our cities. And now I know less on how to prevent these shootings compared to mass shootings because there's a lot more of them. And a lot of them are in direct result of gang warfare. What we can do, or could do, is let the common citizen arm themselves, right? And in order to have a fighting chance against someone, you need to have an arm or a firearm yourself. If someone tries to commit a crime against you in Chicago and you're a store owner and you have a firearm, your odds of surviving that incident go up. We also need to stop kids from joining gangs at such early ages, and that can be done by helping kids get into good schools and making sure that our children in this nation have good, strong family values where kids have a mother and a father in order to raise them right. Because studies show, that if you have two parents, you're more likely to do better in life. And there's also a saying that, the streets will end up raising you in some of these places, as sad as it is, and we just need to give people a chance to live a normal life. Now that's regarding gang violence. There's three categories of shootings that probably happen in this nation. There's mass shootings, criminal violence, and suicides. And those are pretty much all of the shootings wrapped up into one. Maybe crimes of passion, where a husband will murder his wife, something along those lines. But really, I've talked about ways now that we can have action that will actually be effective, instead of just banning all firearms or taking away people's rights to firearms or restricting their rights and their ability to defend themselves. I hope after watching that video you can understand the truth behind these pushes for extensive gun control legislation and the true failures of Uvalde. And I also hope that together we can recognize and try to decrease the violence that occurs in our everyday life, as well as these mass shooting deaths, and in a way that we can care about all shooting deaths. But anyways, thank you for watching that video. I hope you enjoyed it and find it informative. Make sure to like and subscribe if you want to see more content, as well as check out the merch store if you want to see this channel grow and improve. But most importantly, have a good night.